Mercy, the principal path pointed out by Jesus Christ to those who are desirous of following him, to instruct and comfort the sick and the dying poor, as in them they regarded the person of our divine Master.
Catherine McCauley was a remarkable individual. She was a woman dedicated to her faith who saw a need to serve women and children.
Catherine McCauley, as you probably know, was the founder of the Sisters of Mercy in Dublin, Ireland in the 1830s.
She was born into a pretty wealthy family. When she grew up, she was very attached to her father. When he died, she was only 5 years old.
Some years later, her mother died, and she and her two siblings were left as orphans. She moved in with her mother's relatives, and when she moved in, they were doing fine, but they came on hard times economically, and she realized that she was just an extra burden to that family.
In her 20s, she was asked by a family who knew the relatives of her she was living with if she could come and manage their house, be there like a servant almost.
Catherine went to the Callahans' household in about 1803.
They did not have any children. They were Quakers. They were very generous. They were very wealthy.
And the fact that Mrs. Callahan asked her to read to her from the Bible made Catherine much more familiar with the scriptures than most women of her time would have been. Mr. Callahan's will left everything to Catherine.
The thing that she should do by polite society is marry and use her money, donate her money to the church if she wants to do that. Or basically, she shouldn't be a single woman alone doing benevolent work. This is unheard of. But she's starting to do that, and there are women living with her at Bagot Street.
She began immediately, when she inherited the money, to build a house in a very plush neighborhood. Now, you can imagine how that was, bringing the poor into a rich neighborhood.
And she decided to build what today would be called a settlement house or a neighborhood center, building in the fashionable district of Dublin, Ireland, where she could have classrooms to teach children. She could provide safe housing for young girls who were coming into the city looking for work, and it could be a center from which she and other volunteers would go out to visit the sick in their homes, because hospitals were fairly unknown at that time.
She's seeing there are people who need education. She sees that there are people who need shelter, who need food, clothing, what have you. And she and her sisters are trying to be with those people.
Everywhere that the Sisters of Mercy went, when they went to a new town, let's say, to start a new convent, what we call a new foundation, they immediately would provide housing for women if there were some in the area who needed it, or perhaps for orphans. In some cases it was more that need that was there. And they usually went purposely to start a school, and then they would visit the sick in their homes. So those three works became very characteristic of the Sisters of Mercy.
We became one of the first congregations that were known as sisters who could go out among the people, and we got the term walking.
They were not supposed to be out and about on the streets visiting the sick, or discovering that there were women who needed a safe place to stay. So there was a lot of criticism that they couldn't really be authentic sisters because they were doing things that sisters never did. So there was that obstacle. There was the obstacle of poverty, money problems. I mean, we start out by talking about Catherine using her inheritance to start the House of Mercy, to build it and to carry on its works. But we all know money only goes so far, and the needs kept on coming. But then there was also sickness and death.
They were going into the prisons, they were going into hospitals, so they were catching most of the cholera and diphtheria and whatever they were, the different diseases that were rampant in that society.
Catherine herself died of tuberculosis, and she also said that all that illness and death somehow did not keep people from wanting to join the community. Didn't seem to scare them away. So she took that as a sign that God was blessing their work despite all the struggles.